So as mentioned, we do have a format today, so everybody's on the screen, but obviously you can mute and switch off your camera at any time, of course. Do post your questions and comments, throughout the webinar as well within the chat function. That's probably the best place to do it. And we'll hopefully get some of those questions answered in the Q&A bit. So I think we're just waiting on a couple of people I can see still in the kind of joining phase at the moment. Maybe some connectivity issues, perhaps. Okay, I think we'll just kick off just now. That's okay with everybody. So yeah, as I said, good morning. Welcome to everybody for coming on to our webinar this morning on net zero. We have had a sector steering group for a while now on net zero, talking about all these issues and how we can get more social enterprises really engaged in the situation. There was a bit of research carried out that said that social enterprises were really interested in driving forward this agenda and taking part in solutions to tackle climate change, but there are a lot of, I suppose, downsides to that in the sense that social enterprises need the tools and the means and the resources to be able to do that sometimes. I think that's what some of the research revealed to us as well. So Michael Cook from Circular Communities Scotland will be kicking us off as the first speaker, and Michael will also be taking part in the Q&A as well, running the Q&A part as well, kindly, so I don't have to do it. I am currently recovering from a cold, so that actually helps me a lot, I have to say, as you can probably tell by my husky voice. Our other speakers today is Sam Moir from Merry-Go-Round and Derek Hart from COPE Ltd. So without further ado, I will hand over to Michael Cook. Thanks.
Thank you, Duncan, and good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's great to be with you today, and I'll say up front, because I'm sort of emceeing the second half as well. It would be great to have lots of questions in the chat. You'll make my life easier, and probably the panelists, because I won't have to come up with lots of horrible questions. We can, or maybe you'll come up with horrible ones. But I think it'd be great as you hear something from any of the speakers, myself or Sam or Derek. Just don't wait. Just put that question in the chat. We won't answer it right then, but we've got plenty of time for questions afterwards. I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully this will work. That's what we're looking for. Everyone see that okay? Anyone see that okay? Give me a thumbs up, Duncan. Yeah, got a thumbs up. Right. So yeah, the subject today, the doorbell keeps bing bonging, which is people joining in. So welcome if you're just joining us. But the subject today is Scotland, social enterprise and net zero. There's been lots of talk about this before, but the problem's not gone away, the climate change and the need to achieve net zero. So we're going to keep coming back to it, I guess, and ask, I wanted this to be more than just a theoretical session. I also want to just ask practically, what can we do? Just who we are, Circular Communities Scotland, we're a membership body. We sort of have a two-way role between all our members, people that are doing circular economy activity on the ground in local communities. It might be reuse, repair, recycling, sharing libraries, all sorts of things, and our wider stakeholders like Scottish Government and Zero Waste Scotland, who fund us. Really a two-way role, support the sector, represent the sector. I'm going to start with the question of how are we doing? How is Scotland doing? In terms of net zero, we banned net zero around. Scotland set the target of achieving net zero by 2045. That's 13 years away, not that long, in other words. And here's a graph that looks positive in terms of our greenhouse gases. It's going down. We've done it faster than the UK, faster than the G20 countries. But a slight caveat to that, because this graph, how is Scotland really doing? It shows two lines. The bottom line is the official figures that we report, how we're doing on our territorial emissions, the actual carbon that goes into the atmosphere in Scotland, whereas the top line shows all the carbon that goes into the atmosphere on behalf of Scottish people and businesses. And what includes in that is what we've in effect outsourced abroad, our overseas emissions. So for example, something's made in China and then it's shipped here. What's the carbon that's put out in China to make that product, and then the transport to get it here is included in that top graph. And that's important, an important distinction, because in some ways we've tackled the easy stuff and what we're left with is the hard stuff. I don't know what you think about when I say climate change or when I say net zero, but if you're anything like most people, you maybe think of images like this or this. You think about transport, you think about energy production. Do you think about that? Do you think about shopping? And the fact is, recent research done by both COPE and Zero Waste Scotland is quite sobering in this regard, but actually 82% of our carbon footprint in Scotland, this is Zero Waste Scotland figure, comes from all the products and services that we consume, i.e. the majority of it. And the three Earths there, COPE have looked at it and said that if the whole world lived like we do here in Scotland, we wouldn't need one planet Earth for the resources that we use, but we would need three. And of course, we've only got the one. So that's why the circular economy is a major part of responding to the issue of climate change in terms of reducing our carbon output. Today, we have this linear economy. I'm sure probably most of you have heard of this, where we take stuff out the ground, we use it, make it into something. We buy it, that's what we call choose here, and then we throw it away back into landfill. It starts with extraction, it ends with landfill. It starts with the earth and it ends with the earth. It's very wasteful, it's very energy intensive. And those are just some of the problems associated with the different parts of that life cycle, be it, you know, wiping out forests at the start, or be it pollution at the end, or be it the big issue of carbon change throughout this whole process. Whereas the linear economy is all about reuse, repair, recycling. It's all about keeping items in high value use for as long as possible. And both our speakers today have something to do with that circular economy one way or another. And I want to talk about why social enterprises particularly have an advantage in balancing what we call at Circular Community Scotland the 4 Ps. Care for people, care for pounds, care for planet, and care for place. I used to work for big corporate companies, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Prudential, and they in their very, even under law, have an obligation to maximize shareholder value, which is another way of saying take care of the pounds, maximize profit. That's not necessarily a terrible thing, but and we seem to be moving on from that with things like B Corps and things to make sure that we are also balancing other stakeholders in terms of people and planet, and that's a long overdue thing. But I think social enterprises, in their even in their name, social enterprises, I would maybe expand it to social and environmental enterprises. They have a broader purpose than just money. Money is a means more than an end. And they can balance the local place in which they're based, or the people that they exist to employ or serve, and indeed the environment of our planet, be that carbon change or other factors. And this is just some stats on our membership, quite out of date now. It was last November. We're 227 members to date, so quite a bit out of date. Our membership is really growing, which is great. But I really highlight the people and the planet, but also the pounds there. That people are trading, they're making a viable business model, and at the same time they're diverting resources from landfill, they're saving carbon, at the same time as they're employing people, they're creating meaningful work opportunities, etc. I'm going to give you just 4 quick examples of social enterprise in practice that is also achieving something on the path towards net zero. One focused on each of the Ps. So the first one, people, and I'm going to talk here about how Shrub Co-op in Edinburgh work with students. So they have, basically students care passionately about the environment, but research shows that actually that demographic aren't the best actually at recycling. They're not actually the best at some of those behaviors, because they can live, you know, they're moving backwards and forwards, they've got quite transient lifestyles that can be quite challenging. What Shrub do is at the end of every year and every term, they offer an opportunity where people can give clothes or the toaster or the microwave or whatever. If they're moving out of a shared flat, they could give those things. And then at the start of term, new students coming that need those things, can come and get them. They offer active travel, they offer a swap shop, all sorts of things that are just encouraging students to engage in reuse. All our members, everyone you'll hear from today, and probably everyone on the call, we employ people, and it's worth saying that the circular economy is fantastic for job creation, as this green chart shows, that 10,000 tons of waste, it only creates one job in incineration, it creates up to 296 jobs in reuse and repair, and that they are better quality jobs as well. What about the pounds? Waste is bad for business. It's never good if you think of just purely in terms of the grammar. It's never good to waste resources, is it? It's not a good business model just to be wasteful. And therefore, it's worth thinking about how lots of new business models are coming along, like sharing libraries, repair cafes, also things like leasing schemes. Do we all need to own things, or could we just borrow them? And actually someone that knows more about how to look after that thing, look after it for me. And our own reuse consortium I would point to at Circular Communities Scotland, which is turning over about £500,000 a year now, of retailing reuse furniture to local authorities, people that are being given grants under the Scottish Welfare Fund mostly. A great example of local enterprises trading in the whole area of public procurement. Planet. This is the biggest one, both in terms of issues like carbon change and net zero, but also issues like marine plastic. And I've got a picture of Green Hive here. They do litter picks on the beach and collect up plastic items and then use that plastic, recycle it to make products like clocks and key rings and things like that, which they sell to tourists, quite a lot of tourists in that area on the Moray coast. And as well as taking some plastic out of the ocean and making something useful with it that can have a life, it's also part of educating people. People are on their holiday, they value a lovely looking beach, and they're realizing that marine plastic is an issue, and of course our lifestyle contributes to that, and we can do something to change that. And lastly, about place, I think there's been a big issue in recent years with the death of the high street, and a lot of businesses moving online, moving out of communities. But there are certain things you can only get done in a local place. I think like repairing a product or borrowing a product, it's best to do that in a local high street. You can bring jobs and people back into the high street with some of these models. And the picture here is border bikes, based in the borders, you might have guessed it, and they found a lot more people were wanting to ride bikes during the COVID pandemic, nervousness around public transport. And they offered free bikes to key workers. They offered bike hire schemes where they just got bikes into people's hands, and more people were cycling, loving the fact that the roads were really quiet. So my final slide, and then we're going to hear from Derek up in Shetland. What is your response going to be to net zero? What is your response to climate change? I don't want to be just sort of academic and theoretical. And here I've got a bit of a challenge for you. I've got some good news and some bad news. And it's only fair to start with the bad news first. And the bad news is that you're the problem. And I don't mean that you personally as much as we are the problem. I'm the problem, you're the problem. In Scotland, all of us are the problem. But of course, we're the solution as well. We can change the behaviours that have caused climate change and be less of the problem and more of the solution if we take this seriously. And the fact that you're on this call today indicates that you have some appetite to do that. I've just put up, what is it, nine things there, and I would love it if all of you took one of those things, anyone, to just take an action. And I'm thinking really what you do internally in your own organization, or maybe what your organization do externally in your community, just examples of things you could do. You educate yourself. There's this event, you've come to it, brilliant. There's some more events I'll just mention. Circular Economy 360 events being run by SIS, and I'll put a link in the chat in a minute to that. There's a couple more of them to go. Appoint someone on your board to be a champion for climate change, to hold your organization accountable. I think that's a really good move. Do a carbon audit. Do you know what your own carbon footprint is as an organization and what the worst bits of that are so you can action them? make a pledge to be net zero by a particular date. Doesn't achieve anything by itself. We can all pledge, it doesn't mean you do it, but I think it does focus the minds and follow up action and have a plan to close down the carbon footprint that you have. What about what you do externally? And we're probably going to hear from a couple of examples from Shetland and merry-go-round of how they're contributing in their community in a minute. But can you engage your community on this issue? Or can you run some events to talk about it, about climate change and how we respond to it? A few really good models. I've mentioned some: share, repair, reuse, food waste, active travel. They're all brilliant examples that really help people, but also help planet. And if you're engaging in any of them, you are helping reduce the carbon footprint in your community. Apply for funding to do a specific project like one of those above. And I'll mention the Net Zero Fund, and I'll put a link to the chat in a minute for that as well, which is a current fund that is a combination of grant funding and loan funding, particularly for groups to do something about net zero. And I didn't think it'd be right to have the topic of social enterprises and net zero in Scotland without mentioning that. And engaging in policy issues around net zero is my last one. We're about to see in the next few weeks a circular economy bill consultation launched. Great opportunity to encourage our policymakers to have strong and ambitious policies in favour of a more circular economy and more social enterprise in that space as well. So make your voice heard. We will, at Circular Communities, once that has been launched, be running some events on that. I know Zero Waste Scotland and others will as well. So do look out for those and try and get to them. So that's me. Thank you very much. I hope there's some questions coming in the chat. I can see some of that, and I am just going to hand over to Derek. Let's move north. Derek is from COPE, about as far as north as you can get in Scotland, I think, Derek. Look forward to hearing what you have to say on this topic. Over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Michael. And good morning still from sunny Shetland. I'm business manager for COPE Ltd, based in Lerwick. COPE is 24 years old. It's the umbrella organisation for four distinct social enterprises, namely Shetland Soap Company, which sells product all over the country and all over the world. Our kitchen and deli business, which the name is kind of on the label there, they provide buffets and sandwiches for local organisations, and they have a range of deli products using local produce. Coming into my area of responsibility, the garden company, which is like a mini garden centre that grows a lot of local produce and brings in other stuff that can't survive the Shetland climate. And the area of most interest for this presentation is the Shetland Home Company, which is all about reuse and recycling in the community. So we in Shetland Home Co, we recycle all manner of items of furniture, couches, wardrobes, etc., tables, white goods and electrical items, books, DVDs, CDs and vinyl, bric-a-brac, collectibles, china, a lot of IT equipment. We get discarded laptops from the two biggest organisations in Shetland, being the council and the NHS, and we recondition the laptops and sell them to the public once they've been cleaned up. I must point out the social purpose of COPE is all about providing employment and skill opportunities for adults with learning difficulties and disabilities and those on the autistic spectrum. So our pace and speed of working is guided by the pace of what we call the participants. We have an arrangement with Shetland Island Council Social Work Department where we provide opportunities for 100 placements per week. Now, a placement would be a morning session or an afternoon session. So people are coming to COPE to get experience to enable them to move on into the workplace or simply for socialisation reasons. So that is our underlying social purpose. But in COPE Home Company, as I said earlier, it's all about reuse and recycling and educating the community. We are a small community, and you might think everyone will have heard about us, but that is not the case. So we're often out giving talks to different organisations, selling the benefits of what we do. Some of the positives for the Shetland Home Company are minimal competition. We are Revolve accredited. We're the only ones with that accreditation in the islands. And as I said a moment ago, we're very well known. We have at the recycling centre just outside Lerwick, we have a container where we can give people a final chance to divert items to reuse and recycling. They come to us a lot of the time, or we organise pickups in our vans. But quite often, I suppose one of the challenges for us and for any organisation of a similar ilk is that you become a bit of a dumping ground for all people's rubbish, and it's trying to sift through that and get the message across that we are not the recycling centre. As I said, at the official recycling centre, we have two large containers where people get a final chance to divert items that can be turned to benefit by the Shetland Home Company. All this effort enables us to save in the region of 70,000 kilos a year from going to landfill by being reused and recycled into the community, which is probably a drop in the ocean, but it still takes a significant amount of work and effort on our part to make that happen. I suppose the downside of where we live is the challenge of moving stuff for recycling south. The cost of haulage and such like is a significant impediment to our ability to do that. I mean, a lot of the things we get on, like computers, we strip them down for all the metals and such like that are contained in them. We recycle as much as we can. If we can't resell an item, we will break it down and send it to the mainland for recycling. We do a lot of repair work and things like white goods, electricals. We do part testing, ensuring that all items are of good appearance and in good working order before we sell anything on. Something of interest in recent months has been the receipt of mobility scooters. We seem to be doing a trade in mobility scooters at the moment. We're now on to our fourth one, where we, taking advice from Revolve, we make sure that they're roadworthy if necessary. And obviously these can be sold on for a significant amount of income, which always helps. What else? I think I've probably covered most of the headline stuff there. I don't have any slides. I apologise for that. This is my first day at work in a number of days. But if anyone would like to talk to me directly, I'm welcome to receive any emails or telephone communications. We obviously have the COPE website, which will cover a lot of what I've been speaking about here. But if anyone wants to know anything else, they can either ask a question at the end or speak to me offline later on.
And get your questions in the chat straight away, and we'll come back to questions, and there'll be an opportunity to ask Derek any questions shortly. But before we answer those questions, we're going to hear from our third speaker, Sam Moir. Sam leads the work at a social enterprise called Merry-Go-Round in Glasgow. You may have seen Sam before with another hat on. She does work for Zero Waste Scotland as well, but she's here in her capacity for Merry-Go-Round, although I'm sure she'll mention something that Zero Waste Scotland are doing, and we don't mind that either. So over to you, Sam. We can see your presentation well, but we can't hear you. You're muted.
Found it. Okay. Can you hear me now? Grand. Okay. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I've got my merry-go-round hat on today. Zero Scotland as a day job, but I set up Merry-Go-Round 10 years ago, really in direct response to the work I was doing previously actually at Circular Community Scotland by the old name, and supporting reuse organisations and making that behaviour change. And I learned a lot through doing that, and also realised that I just wanted to do it myself. So 10 years ago, I set up Merry-Go-Round. And for those of you that don't know who we are, we're a social enterprise in the south side of Glasgow. Let me just figure out how I can forward the slides. You think I'd have done this before? Give me a second. Why can't I forward them? Aha. So this is our lovely shop in the south side of Glasgow. We are primarily a children's charity shop, essentially. So it's donations of items that come in all through the front door. It's everything maternity, baby and children up to the age 5. And it's not just clothes and toys, it's books, prams, electrical equipment, nursery furniture, everything maternity related as well. And the whole purpose of what we're doing here is to encourage people to shop secondhand over new. And because we have that full range of items, literally everything that you could possibly want, and the quality is so good, we find that most people in our community, actually in Glasgow, that is what they're doing. They come to us first before they decide to buy something secondhand, which was our aim 10 years ago, and I think that we've really reached that. There's only 2 things that we don't take, and that's car seats and mattresses, and that's purely for health and safety reasons, which is that those items really should be purchased new, but absolutely everything else then we'll have in the shop. And you'll see that, I'll talk about this later on, but in terms of, you know, how we achieve the impact that we achieve, I would say that primarily it's because we are competing with buying new, and we feel really strongly about that. If someone is going to make that decision, or they want to buy something secondhand, then why shouldn't it be as easy, as good, if not better, which we believe it is, shopping secondhand locally. So our vision then was to be this one-stop shop. We do a number of things, which I'll tell you about in a second, but we want to be this one-stop shop.
Just to chip in, we're not actually seeing the presentation move on, I think, because I think your slideshow, I think we got the wrong screen. Could you just actually put the mouse on the vision slide on the left of that, just to bring it onto the, we're seeing the...
Did you see the pictures previously?
We can see all the pictures down the left side, 1 to 6 as well, which is fine. But if you we're not seeing the, so you need to actually move your mouse to number 3 vision on the left-hand side of where you are now.
I'm seeing it totally differently to how you're seeing it.
I think it's swapped. We got the wrong screen, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
So just go down, go down. Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah, and then click the next one when you get there. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know what you're seeing at the minute, but let's...
We're seeing the second slide now.
Okay, yeah. Third slide. Yeah, okay, so we want to be this one-stop shop. And I think it's really important, a number of things that you hit on, Michael, I took a note of, because I think it's really important, you know, how we achieve the impact that we're achieving is because we are a local business, because we hit that triple and quadruple bottom line. The impact of what we do is really visual. And that all helps to change the perception of secondhand and being like an environmental organisation. So just to show you, we have 5 different strands to what we do. At the core is that green environmental one. So primarily we're there, like I said, we exist to rehome baby and children's goods and to persuade people to then buy what they need back again secondhand rather than purchasing new. We have a number of other things that we add on as well. So going to the right there in the blue strand, we have a carousel programme. So we support about 70 families a month with free goods. Further across the pink strand there, that's volunteering. So although we have 13 paid staff, and again, you know, creating employment and you know, sort of local economic and social benefits that we have, We also have a really large volunteering programme, which is great. So that brings a whole strand of additional benefits as well. And an expanded number of people then know about us and what we do because of it, and also can contribute to what we do, even if they're not shopping for baby goods. The yellow section here, that's events. So we do bring people together, and we are then a community hub, and many people find out about us because of the events and the support groups that we have for families, which again is just another way of letting people know what we do. And people also know that by shopping with us secondhand, not only is it more affordable and great quality, but that the money is going to good causes like supporting training, employment, volunteering, supporting families in need with free packs, and supporting the events and the support activities that we have going on, and all of that really helps as well. And then the purple is the shop. So all of it happens through that one space. So specifically then, just to mention the environmental aim, because that's what we're here to talk about. I mean, it's really straightforward, and I feel really strongly that we should be really clear and straightforward with what it is that we want to do. We communicate the benefits of reuse. We communicate to people the impact of what they're doing, not just within our organisation, but within the community, and also then, of course, the planet as a whole. And so we're continuously telling people about the number of items that we're rehoming and the impact of that. And again, just to normalise it. So we're saying, other people in the community, well, practically everybody in the community is doing this, and you could be too. But the second part there is, to support people. So again, we work very closely with the community. We talk to families when they come in, which we think stands us apart from other places that you would go and shop. It's pretty anonymous. Whereas when you come into Merry-Go-Round, we know the babies' names, we know the families that come in, and they come in repeatedly. We've got a really high return rate in customers because of the support that they get from us for just advice on things, or feeling like a real part of the community. And then thirdly, we want to make it easy. And I think this is the crux of it all. So for me, shopping secondhand has to be exactly the same, if not better, than shopping for new items. And the way that we do that is very much making the shop a great shopping experience. We lay it out just like a high street shop. We've got choice. We operate exactly like a high street shop would. And we make sure that we're responding to people's needs and what it is that they need, and we make it easy. And we've got this great customer experience where we actually chat to people, and we've got all these additional things happening. So I think making it easy for people first and foremost is really, really important, and then talking about the impact of actually what they're doing. So just put some stats here to kind of give you a bit of an idea. We just celebrated our 10th birthday last month, so we pulled together lots of what we've achieved over the last 10 years. So 67,000 families have come through Merry-Go-Round over the last 10 years, but to put that into perspective, 10,000 of those were just in the last year. So word is very much spreading. The increase of what we do is huge. We expanded our shop by 50%, and we instantly doubled the amount of stuff that we could put inside, and we doubled the income stream and doubled the amount of stuff that we were rehoming. So just having that kind of volume and accessibility and choice and making it look even better was huge for us, and it just made such a real shift. But also people are just much more aware. They want to make the right choice, and they want to access secondhand goods, and we can really see that rise happening pretty rapidly. And in terms of numbers of things, 240,000 items, which is 76 tonnes, and that's over the last 10 years. But again, to put it into perspective, 50,000 of those items were just last year. And that's everything from baby grows, shoes, up to prams. So it's a real variety of things. It's not just, big, heavy things. It's lots of little things too. But I think most importantly, we really do feel like we have changed the perception of secondhand, and people do come to us first. They message us, or they come in the shop and they say, I need a baby walker, I'm looking for some new clothes, I don't want to buy it new, can you show us what we've got? And we will absolutely look in our stock room and look everywhere, and we probably have it. So they will come to us first, and they actually now get quite disappointed if we just don't have the size that they need, and they have to go and buy it new, because they're now very aware of, well, one, the cost of buying new, the cost difference, but secondly, they're so used now to reducing their impact of raising a family, that it's hard for them to kind of go back and buy a new thing. They really feel it when they have to do that. And the big change, I would say, is that when we first opened, we had a separate section for gifts, because we thought that people didn't want to buy secondhand items as a gift for someone. So we had some handmade and sort of new items, and we, after 2 or 3 years, done away with that, because actually people are really quite happy to be buying secondhand as a gift, and they want to shout about it. So it's that direct impact on the families that shop with us, but they are now telling other people about it. And we don't really do any marketing, it's all word of mouth. So people will say, actually, we heard a many ground, you want to go there, this is where you get all the good high quality secondhand stuff. There's more I could say about cloth nappies, but I'm probably way out of time. And also, just to echo what Derek said about Revolve and the quality and safety aspect, I think that's really important too. So given that we're also Revolve certified, and so given that confidence to customers who maybe wouldn't think about buying electrical items or high risk items like high chairs or prams, but we go through all those safety checks and we let them know that we do that. And again, that just changes, helps to change the perception of what it is that we're doing. Whistle stop.
Thank you. Would you put slide 2 up again?
Yeah.
The point you made at the end there about you know, second hand isn't second best. I mean, that's not the words you used, it's the words that Barbara used in the chat, but that you want to normalise reuse and what you've done on gifts. I think that's brought home by these images of how professional your shop looks. Yes, I think we skipped over that due to the technical glitch. So I think it's just good to end by letting people see that. It doesn't, to me, that doesn't look like a second-hand shop, and why should it? And the more that happens, the more we'll go to normalising reuse in today's culture. Thank you. If you can unshare your screen, now is the time to get your questions in. We have about another 25 minutes, 22 minutes, and we're bang on time, which is great. And I see some questions have already come in the chat. So I'm going to pick up on a couple of questions that Anne Michelle has put in the chat, and just give you all time to submit new questions to keep us going. Anne asks, what resources did you find useful, or did you access, or organisations that you leaned on, for example, when you were just getting started? Sam, we know that was 10 years ago for you. Derek, I'm not sure how long COPE's been going, but do you know what resources you found useful when you were just starting out? Who wants to go first? Sam, I see you nodding. I'll come to Sam first and then Derek.
Okay, yeah, do you know, actually, so we were funded through First Port, so that was really useful, lots of funding and support through there. And then the kind of local, like Glasgow Social Enterprise Networks and Jobs and Business Glasgow were hugely supportive, actually. So I found that kind of local network really helpful, and the national networks for bigger things, so hearing about bigger strands of funding, or like networking and finding out what other people were doing was really, really helpful. But yeah, those kind of local support agencies were really useful for putting you in touch with people locally and actually doing hands-on stuff.
Thank you. Derek, any thoughts from you?
Well, I haven't been around for nearly the same length of time as Sam has, but the main support for COPE, it comes from the council and from the Shetland Charitable Trust. They give us a significant chunk of money each year to help, and that's topped up by what comes through the tills and the various businesses. But to me, Michael, this is all about people. Local people have supported these businesses from day one. Many of them have come and gone and moved on to other things. But I think, you know, we've been a presence in the heart of the community. A lot of people either know what we do or like to think they know what we do, and that's a huge help. We're highly recognisable. But I would, as I say, I think the people who have committed, funding, yes, that's important. We can never get enough funding, and we're constantly trying get funding for different things. For example, Shetland Home Co is looking to develop the existing footprint to make it more linear in the processes, and we'll waste a lot of time moving stuff about back and forward and up and down. But so yeah, there's never enough funding available. But basically, it's about the people, the people in the local community take ownership of this project really, and support it by donating or by working or volunteering.
Thank you, Derek. That's a really valuable perspective. I remember early on in my days in this role, visiting one of our members on the Isle of Bute, Find Futures, and I shot a little video when I was there. And I remember something that Rini said on that video, the sort of CEO there. She said, we are the community, and we are part of the community, and the community is part of us. And I think that is, in a way, in the DNA and the fabric. If you're a social enterprise, then you are rooted in a community. That may be an island. In the case of COPE, it may be a city centre like merry-go-round, but your strength comes from the roots in that community. And if you forget that, then you're not really a social enterprise. You may be an effective enterprise, but how social are you? And I think what I would encourage as a third strand to be brought into that conversation is environment, because people live on a planet and we can't get away from the consequences of that. And that's obviously part of the focus of today's discussion. But, you know, if we look after people and the planet burns, that's a very short-sighted perspective. Equally, if we are always ranting at people about climate change and we don't recognize that they have, you know, if they don't have a home over a roof over their heads or food on their table, that's not really a helpful critique, is it? It doesn't really land well. You can't change behaviors if people's basic needs aren't met. So sustainability as a phrase has to balance people and planet together. Let's move on to another question. David, I wonder whether you raised a couple of comments / questions. David Reed, I'm speaking of here, and you've raised one pretty technical question, and I wonder if you will be willing to share your mic at least, or video, and just ask it or say what you're thinking, because you're obviously thinking quite deeply about something. So you've asked about corporate social responsibility and social enterprise double bottom line, and stakeholder capitalism. There's lots of technical phrases in there. I think I know what they all mean, but you're asking, has the message been given the prominence it deserves? I don't know. Are you willing to come on and share about that, or do you just want us to read on to it?
Yeah, if you can hear me, okay, I'll share.
I can hear you, David. Great.
Well, excellent.
So share your thought and then ask your question.
Okay. From those not from the social enterprise community who perhaps could engage with the social enterprise community, there seems to be, on the environmental message, a very close parallel with corporate social responsibility. So we, as an audience, those who are fans of the social enterprise model, might face indifference in the sense of, well, we're doing all that already. We cover that within corporate social responsibility. What I'm getting at in my question is, social enterprises operate to a different business model. They bring their impact on society and people into their operations. It's not an add-on. It's not about ticking a box in corporate social responsibility. It's what they do. And I just wonder if at times the fundamental, simple difference between a social enterprise and a private sector business who's promoting corporate social responsibility is as clear as it should be. And is there something we all need to do to maybe change that? Okay,
Derek or Sam have a view on that? I mean, I've probably got some things I could say on that, but I'd love to hear from our, I'm emceeing, I don't want to hog the discussion.
I mean,
It's a bit above my pay grade, that one.
I think it's fascinating. In fact, I've just been having conversations that the other day with my other work hat on about this idea of some businesses wanting to showcase that they do the right thing, which can mean different things to different people. I'm not entirely answering your question, David, but it just really reminded me of a conversation I was having yesterday, which is really closely linked. So what is it that people want to showcase that they're doing well? It can sometimes be that environmental message, or it can sometimes be the kind of social message. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with the B Corp, which is this kind of new way of for any type of business being able to showcase that they are a good, sustainable business. But we're kind of looking into that at the moment to say, well, what does that actually mean? What is the good part about what they do? And actually, do people know what it means? So they know that, you know, being a B Corp is a good thing. And I hear lots of friends talking about, you know, oh, you should buy from this company, they're a B Corp. And I think, you don't even know what that means. I'm not sure I even know what it means. But people just want to know that they're working with a good organization. And I could talk about it for hours because I find it really fascinating. Like, what do people mean by that? And it's different to different people, I suppose. And yeah, absolutely, we can set ourselves apart because we do measure impact. And so social enterprises are much more readily available to say, well, okay, our impact in the social sense is this, and this is the number of jobs, and this is the number of volunteering hours that we have, and in the environmental impact side, this is what we do, this is what we divert from landfill. And there's many other ways that we can talk about it, and we don't talk about it enough, absolutely not, for sure. And then how do we do that? How do we get that impact across in a really easily understandable way, kind of quickly? Because other bigger companies who are not doing anywhere near as well as what we're actually doing get to say things like, we're a social business, or we have a social conscience, and people just nod and go, okay, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add to that, and I've spoken on this sometimes at length, but I think that companies need to become more social and more environmentally conscious. And if CSR and B Corps and all those things are a tool to help that happen, then I'm grateful to them. But in their very DNA, in their very constitution, so to speak, social enterprises, that is their end, not just their means. And why it's not a marketing strategy, it's not a way to win some more customers, or make staff feel better about working there. It's the only reason they exist. And so I think the social enterprise model is uniquely powerful in that. But equally, we need to learn from big business about how to be more efficient businesses, how to market ourselves better, how to tell the story better, because, you know, Apple are better at branding than I am. You know, Amazon are better at logistics than I am. So I think, you know, I think there is a two-way traffic needs to happen, but I would say the net zero climate emergency is too significant and too existential for us to pontificate about the relative merits of, you know, we all need to be pulling in the right direction faster than we are and more stronger than we are. And that is corporates and social enterprises. So, you know, back to my last slide, you're either part of the problem or the solution. That's true of companies, and it's true of social enterprises in relation to net zero. And we all need to make sure we're part of the solution more than we're part of the problem. And actually I say that to myself as an individual who enjoys holidays and, you know, has a car, and, you know, I'm not lecturing at you, but I recognize it in myself. And so, you know, I think, yeah, that would be my answer. Martin, you've unvideo muted. Do you want to say something on this topic? We'd be pleased to hear that. Unmute if you do, or on a different topic. What do you want to say? Great to have you.
It was really just to pick up on some of the points that have been raised, that there is a fundamental difference between something like corporate social responsibility and either third sector organisations or organisations that have got that value built into them, into the foundation of it. Good example of corporate social responsibility where it works but doesn't work is that historically we've seen major events like the Olympics being sponsored by Coca-Cola and McDonald's. Now, they're big organisations that make a lot of money and have got deep pockets that can put that money into major events like that. But there's no real value associated with like eating a McDonald's or drinking Coca-Cola that's putting out the message to say this is an association to sport and encouraging young people to get active and fit and healthy. So corporate social responsibility doesn't generally look at how the money was made in the first place. It's simply organisations saying we want to put something back in, which it can be admirable. But what we're also starting to see over the last couple of years, let's a real increase in what are called value-led businesses, which are businesses not social enterprises, privately owned, but they operate and are set up to deliver some form of social or environmental change. So they don't have an asset lock, they behave like an ordinary business, but they do have a very strong value system. So they deliberately employ people that are disadvantaged. They operate to work towards, not to get to net zero, they start off being net zero. So we're seeing a real increase in that within the private sector. And I think one of the big opportunities is going to be how the third sector engages with a new group of organisations, because we've got a third sector that's trying to become more enterprise and trying to understand enterprise activity better. And the third sector are generally very, very good at delivering social change and measuring that impact. We've now got a private sector that is like very good at the enterprise element, and they're trying to learn how to be more socially conscious, more environmentally conscious. So we've got two different skill sets there within two sectors where they marry very well together. And what we need to do is almost just get these bodies and put them in the same room and let them share some of that knowledge and share some of that practice. And that should then start to deliver kind of much greater levels of social change and social impact. But I say it's been something that's been there for a while, but certainly in the last maybe 2-3 years, we've seen a real increase in the number of value-led businesses, and it tends to be a little bit generational. It tends to be generally people under 40 that are setting up businesses that they're driven by that sort of element of social change or environmental change, and it's something that's going to say they want to fundamentally build in. But I know it's a concern because lots of people have got this question about, yeah, but how do we separate that from a social enterprise? How do we get the message out to the public so that they understand when you're dealing with an organisation that does have that asset lock and does reinvest all the money back in? So there is something there in terms of that branding, and I think it's something that the third sector has to get better at, is not just delivering social environmental change, but measuring it and reporting on it so that the consumer at the end of the day, or the end user or the funder, can clearly see exactly what that value is. And I think it's something that my experience, I've worked across the third sector for a long time, about my experience is it's something that historically it's not always been great at. The third sectors have been very good at delivering a lot of social change, not always the best at reporting on it and educating other people as to what they're delivering. So I think there's areas for opportunities in that. So I think there is a lot of potential certainly going forward.
Thank you, Martin. Some really good thoughts there. Let's move on to, there's some more questions in the chat. I want to try and get to as many of them as we can. I'm going to merge two questions together, smash them together like they do on that TV show. So one is a question from Julie about social enterprises in procurement. I think the word procurement was in there, maybe I've just made that up. So the question comes from, how do you encourage social enterprises to incorporate circular principles into their organisational model in a way that is embedded in net zero and the social mission to be? Net zero fund is a promising way to start. It's got nothing to do with procurement. I made that up. That must have been an earlier question. So how do you embed social enterprise and circular principles into an organisational model? Good question. And another plug for the Net Zero Fund, which I gave a link to further up. So that's great. Build circular economy training predominantly into incubators. I think that's a good question around incubation and coming up with new models when entrepreneurs are thinking about their ideas. I mean, behind a social enterprise is probably a social entrepreneur who had an idea. How do we make them think about circular economy in that? I think that's a really good question. Sam, you want to add anything to that? I see your thoughtful hat on.
Yeah, so familiar. Yeah, it's interesting because it's something that you'd asked us just before we kind of everyone came in, Michael, was about how we incorporate sort of net zero principles into our organisation, because as green businesses, our whole purpose of being is to support other people to reuse and to educate. And something that Martin just said there about being a value-led business really got me thinking. That's where my brain was going. Because some people assume that because we are a good business, I'm just going to use that catch-all phrase, that we do everything well. And I'm sitting here thinking of all the things that actually, well, not necessarily, because we're a reuse organisation, so we're a green business that we support other people to make these green choices. There's definitely a lot more that we could do within our organisation to be greener and to transition to net zero. And, you know, even in terms of our premises and the vehicles that we have and the energy that we consume and the consumables, and absolutely holding my hand up to say that we're not doing as well in those areas internally as we should do. We do, you know, think about our values and our ethos overall when we're thinking about, you know, our policies and processes in relation to staff, or just how we want to develop. So we are thinking about all those things, but it's that difference between the external, what you project out there, and what you're actually doing as a business. So I totally agree. I think we should be incorporating more of that stuff within our organisation, but it's just hard to juggle so many things at once.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thanks, Sam. I think recognise it and you know, apply for some funding and do something about it would be my encouragement. And don't be afraid. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I mean, sometimes you can make a change to net zero that's fairly small, but at least you're making a step in the right direction. And then you know, every journey starts with a step, as Confucius said. And the two questions I was confusing with. So actually, one was from David about global supply chain and the role of social enterprises in recycling and procurement in that. And then one was from Barbara from the Edinburgh Remakery, which is social value within public procurement is becoming central requirement. Many social enterprises can help support organisations to deliver their social value within the realm of public procurement. The challenge is to ensure that what is promised is delivered. So, I mean, this is almost a global problem a question in terms of supply chains, and a local problem in terms of procurement. How do we crack into procurement? And I'm going to give a little answer to that and just post a link to something I think is fascinating that's just been passed in Spain, which is a new law that says anything to do with collecting, transporting or processing reuse goods, in effect, 50% of public contracts in that space have to go to social enterprises, which I think is quite bold. Wouldn't it be great to see something like that in Scotland? And what I would say, though, is we have to earn it. And I'm mindful of Sam's other hat on, and I'll just make a bit of a plug for Revolve and know that Merry-Go-Round and COPE are both Revolve stores. And, you know, part of the role that Revolve has had is in upping the game of professionalizing the sector. I mean, when you walk into Merry-Go-Round, you wouldn't know you're in a reuse shop. And I think that's great. And I think maybe people think that, oh, we'll start an organization and when we get to a point where we're ready, we'll go for Revolve. But actually, when you're starting would be a great time to actually think about how do you start really well. It's easier to set high standards at the beginning and knock it out the park and, you know, impress people. So I think standards, great practice, good practice, I mean, all of that has a role in earning the trust of, for example, public procurement and you know, so whilst I would love a law that says, you know, let's have 100% go to social enterprises of public contracts, we don't actually have the capacity to deliver on those contracts at the moment. So it needs to be a step-by-step approach. We need to grow our capacity, our professionalism, our logistics, our marketing, our storytelling, and we need to be given it, because if we're given it, then we can grow those things. So it's a bit of a chicken and an egg thing there would be my response to that. So we've also had a question around presentations. I'm sure they will be on the video, so they will be there. I'm also happy, Duncan, for my PowerPoint to be added to that if there's a way to do that. But people have also asked about contact details. Just to say, I posted a link to all 3 organisations in the chat, and there are contact details off that. Derek, someone specifically asked for your contact details. If you're happy to share that, would you post your email address in the chat? I will be posting mine. We've got literally 1 minute to go, so I'm going to invite Sam and Derek if they want to give one comment, and then it's to Duncan to wrap up. Thank you from me.
Well, thank you from me and for allowing me to take part in this. I mean, I think there's so much come out of it. To me, a big thing is interaction between social enterprise or the third sector and the corporate sector. It's about talking constantly, avoiding duplication, avoiding egos, and just generally, you know, taking things forward towards net zero, where everybody's marching to the same tune.
Yeah, so much I could say. I think just on that last point, you know, how can we find out how to do more? It's a bit of a minefield. I think you don't have to do everything at once. I think that's the thing. I've just posted a link to the Zero Waste Scotland Circular Economy Accelerator, and it's just a wealth of information and signposting to what else can you do within your organisation, and just be mindful that there's within the organisation, and I know some of your support agencies. So, what else are you encouraging others to do? But if there's so much information out there, and just take baby steps. You know, hear one good idea and just see what you can do about actually making it happen.
That's really great. Thank you, everybody, for that. Big thanks to our speakers, to Michael, Derek, and Sam. I think it's a really great discussion, really engaged. Yeah, we will send around an email after this event as well, just to kind of, we'll post all the web links in there and stuff like that, and a link to the film as well, so that will be uploaded to our Vimeo channel. So yeah, a really, really important discussion, I think, and something we're not going to be ending just here. We will be continuing this discussion as we go forward with a new kind of intermediary body, and this is obviously a priority for us going forward to really drive social enterprise in the right direction in terms of net zero. So a big thank you to everybody for coming along today, for your contributions, and yeah, do get in touch if you have any follow-up questions for me or for any of the speakers, and I can pass them on. Have a good day, everybody.